For space here, spread out, relax,
Chill.
throw all our plans all over the place.
We're on.
Switching it to
Welcome, everybody, to the regularly stated meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. This is the meeting for Thursday, August 15th, 2024. This is to formally advise that as required by General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on June 16, 2021, as extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, the Yarmouth Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting at the date and time noted above. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via the alternative public access provided on the notice of meeting available on the Town of Yarmouth website. Again, this is the Yarmouth Conservation Commission meeting for August 15th, 2024. Our first order of business is a request for a determination of applicability. Eduardo de Souza and Fern Maher, sorry if I made a mistake there, 33 Deerfield Road, proposed 16 by 24 foot standalone garage and land subject to coastal storm flowage. Come on up to the table here, and when you get organized, just state your name for the record and then briefly describe what you'd like to do.
Okay, so you can introduce, he's the contractor,
My name is Eduardo Souza. I'm the contractor on this project.
and I'm Jean Bowden, and I'm a permit coordinator, so I'm helping them with the paperwork and, you know, doing the research and sort of facilitating the whole thing for them. And the owners are here,
Okay,
Mr. and Mrs. Maher, and basically, we're here about the two little detached garage they want to build at the rear of the property, and it is in a, you know, subject to flooding, that area. So we are doing the request for determination, and I think that it's not going to, absolutely not going to negatively impact or result in any adverse effects to the property or the surrounding area. And we also have, it will, the whole list of things that, you know, so we don't have to do a notice of intent. And we're not going to be really disturbing any land there. It's a slab. There's not going to be any flood damage due to filling. It will not, it's not going to pollute the ground area, and will not have any effect on wildlife or wildlife habitat. And I think that it's going to be okay to do it, and hopefully you'll agree.
okay, thank you very much. Any questions from the board?
Just one. When we spoke to the petitioners, they said they weren't going to put a driveway in. And if they decide later to put a driveway in, we would like it to be pervious, so not a,
Whether, if it's gravel, it's okay?
yeah,
Yeah.
pervious.
That's what we talked
But he said he's really using this as a place to store things. So, okay, that's it.
Okay. Anybody else? Brittany?
No questions, thank you.
Anybody in the audience have any comments, questions on this one? Anybody on Zoom, raise your hand digitally. If not, would somebody like to make a motion for a -2?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. So a negative determination is that's a positive thing for you. It doesn't mean, it means you don't have to do any more filing with conservation. You can go ahead and start working on your building permit.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Oh.
All right, next order of business is a request to extend an order of conditions. The first one is for SE 83-2299 Baxter Nye Engineering and Surveying for Lisa and James Valone, 63 Smiths Point Road, as proposed renovation of garage, guest house, hardscape and landscape reconstruction and septic tank replacement in a buffer zone. Is there somebody here for this one?
There is no representative. He made sure with me that there is no problems with this extension request. The Great Island Homeowners Association has a no work allowed during the summer months, so they weren't able to complete the work on time.
I'm going to have you repeat that.
And I assume this is the first.
This is the first extension request, and there are no issues. I did a site visit, and they just need a little bit more time to complete the house.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
No.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion to extend for 3 years?
So moved?
They actually just requested 2 years.
Sorry, 2 years then.
Still so moved.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. I have another request to extend an order of conditions for SE 83-2282, Anthony Fiola, 1 Malfa Road, seawall fill, toe stones, and plantings at coastal bank buffer zone to a salt marsh and land subject to coastal storm flowage velocity zone. Anybody for this one either?
I didn't get in touch with them.
Okay. Is this a first? This is a first one as well? Or is this?
This is the first extension request for 2 years. This project consisted of a sheet pile bulkhead being constructed in the velocity flood zone with the addition of placement of toe stones along the revetment wall once the surface had eroded enough. There he is.
Do you have any comments on Fiola there, Dan?
Oh, I'm comfortable if you guys are. Pretty straightforward request,
Okay, and you said 2 years?
if
You did
possible,
said-
yeah. I think that'll line up with the house redo, so.
How long do you think before the revetment stones are ready to go in?
I would say, probably in the spring, I would think. Looking at it, it's pretty scary, the amount of erosion that's happened.
Yeah.
There's not much left, so either we'll come back and just go over the plan before we install, but I would say either late this year or early next.
I have some better photos from this one. Nope. That's all I got.
Okay, so any other comments or concerns? Anybody on the board? We don't usually do this for extensions, do we?
Up to you.
I have a concern if I could raise it.
All right, so I will let you do this. So we don't usually take public comment for extensions, but come up to the microphone and state your name and your address.
My name is Cindy Van Dorn. I live at 4 Malfa Road. My only concern is the length of time that this is going to take to get that abutment up, because I have a big project right next to them, and it's impacting my area greatly, not having that, because it's just a straight wall, and it's just taking all the stone, it's just all the sand is gone, it's all stone there, and waiting until the spring, all the winter storms and everything else, is just causing a lot of damage. And I didn't know if anything could be done sooner than that.
Well, I don't think I can compel
Oh, I don't know.
people to-
That was my only concern, because this wall has been up for a number of years now, and it's just causing a lot of damage. It's like a third impact on me. And I just was curious if it could be something could be done as soon as possible. That's
I'll
all.
certainly alert the neighbor, that we may be able to accelerate the process. And so we'll certainly take that to heart and see if we can get it in sooner rather than later.
Okay, anybody else on the board? Okay, if somebody would like to make a motion then to extend this for 2 years.
I will make it.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much for your time.
And just a reminder to the applicants that on the plan, it does have the toe stones being nourished with sand and planted with beach grass. Just make sure he knows that that's on the plan, because the last time I met with him, he thought the planting was just the mitigation. Just go over the plan with him a little.
Absolutely. Will do, and duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next order of business is a request to amend an order of conditions for SE 83-2379, Town of Yarmouth, 170 South Shore Drive, this pumping station and sewer installation for wastewater, proposed dewatering discharge into the ocean at 3 locations. And Brittany, I want to make sure we don't have any, we still don't have the natural heritage or DMF comment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we will have to at least continue for that.
Understood.
Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike Judici from CDM Smith, representing the town of Yarmouth. As you indicated, we're seeking an amendment to an order of conditions that was issued last year for construction of a pumping station on South Shore Drive. That pumping station is part of Phase 1 of the town's comprehensive wastewater management plan. It's included in Contract 3. Construction on that project started earlier this year. The contractor ran into issues in terms of being able to effectively discharge the dewatering operation from his trench as he was installing pipe on South Shore Drive. Working with Brittany a number of times, I came up with a few different locations to discharge what's essentially clean water that they're pumping out of the trench into a series of settling basins. Because of the volume of the water that they had to pump, that wasn't an effective means of handling their groundwater discharges. So we've asked them to come up with a different approach that would effectively eliminate any issues in terms of flooding neighbors or flooding the roadway, as was happening with what they implemented this past year. Coming up this season, there'll be actually even deeper sewers to be installed on the South Shore Drive with obviously more groundwater to handle. So what they have proposed is a series of 3 locations, one at Seaview Beach, one at Parkers River Beach, and one down South Middle Beach at Judon Way, to pump their discharges into a settling basin at each of those 3 locations, depending on where they were working, and to allow that discharge to flow out to the ocean. So receive some settling in the basins and then overflow into the ocean through a series of 12-inch pipes at each of the proposed locations, as is shown there.
Okay, questions from the ward?
Are those pipes not going to be permanent while the work is going on, correct?
It's just temporary while they're doing the work. So it's high-density polyethylene plastic pipe.
And how do people get around those pipes if they're walking the beach?
They're 12-inch pipes, so presumably they could step over. This work wouldn't start until sometime in September. Obviously, they're not allowed to work on South Shore Drive during the summertime, so it would be happening off-season for the most part. They have, as indicated in the submittal, they have filed for a WM15 permit with DEP, and as I think Brittany indicated, that hasn't come back yet. They've also updated their stormwater pollution prevention plan with EPA. But this is another piece of the puzzle that needs to get approval from the commission or an amended order to allow this to go forward.
And when you have to dig deeper, will they be still using those same 3 areas, not a 4th area?
This is what they've proposed. They've looked at it and said this will get them
care.
what they need, correct, in terms of handling the groundwater discharge.
From the viewpoint of DEP, they may come back and they would know if there are federal requirements. Do you know of any?
As I said, they had to file something with EPA anyway through their stormwater pollution prevention plan and through their construction general permit. So if there were any issues, they would have come down through EPA at that level, I would assume.
So that included the where and how long?
This same submittal, they submitted, the contractor did. That wasn't part of our work, correct.
And so you'll go through the whole process again if you have to extend them.
If he needs additional locations, then certainly he would.
Length of getting it out.
Oh, in terms of extending it further.
So there was nobody that has made comments on the length of those pipes.
Not that we're aware, no, not at this point. There's also, as Brittany indicated, there was a required submittal with Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. That submittal has been made. I'm joined by Maggie Lofsted of our office as well. And we haven't heard back from Natural Heritage because there is a habitat area, presumably the piping plover along the beach, obviously. So assume there will be restrictions on time of year that he can do this as well.
Well, we actually had to do a separate, like, MISA review checklist filing because this is an amendment to the existing order of conditions. So it's actually a separate filing entirely.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else?
How long are these, do you think these are going to be in place? Do you have any idea how long it's going to take? How many months or years?
At least through next spring, I would say, and then obviously come Memorial Day, he would either be done or have to remove all of these facilities, and then if he needed to come back the following year, then
Okay.
it just depends on what he gets for production in terms of how quickly he can install the sewer, but my understanding is he plans to hopefully have it done before Memorial Day next year.
So they're coming in and out. I wasn't sure about that.
Will the ocean floor be scoured, and if so, how much? I mean, how are you preventing that from happening? Are they preventing it from happening?
Yeah, that's a good question. There is a detail that they've included there. He didn't look like he proposed any, he has a 45-degree bend, as you can see. I think it's detail B in the submittal. The bottom of that detail, it shows he has a 45-degree bend on the pipe so that it's not laying directly on the sand, so it's shooting.
Coming out,
So it's shooting up.
Yeah, I see.
That's his intent.
Well, that'll be subtitle or
At high tide, it'll be subtitle.
subtitle, right?
Yeah, I think he's proposing to put it by the low tide elevation.
And so do you have any information about the volume of water that's going to be going through here and the velocity of the water? To estimate if there's going to be any erosion issues or scour? Because just because it's at an angle, if it's coming at a significant volume, it would still have potential to cause erosion or scour of the ocean floor.
We can take a look because he had to file with the state.
Yeah.
That like basically it's the NIPDs that
Yeah.
you filed with the US EPA, but the state reviews it, which they typically don't. It's not a reviewable permit. So we can see what he included in that. If he included any volumes and velocities. So I don't have that right now.
I think that would be valuable information because I think when we were there this winter, just looking at the issue, that they need to discharge a lot of water to get those pipes down in there. I'm just worried about the volume and the velocity
And
when
maybe
you're
put
just
some-
coming in
some
that.
scour protection or something at the.
Yeah, if there are any measures that you can include, that would
Okay,
make the board feel better.
yeah, of course.
Anybody else?
Do you have any idea how long the state, it's a loaded question, how long the state will take to comment?
I mean, NHSP has 90
Natural
days.
Heritage?
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Brittany?
For natural heritage or
Oh, the
DMF?
MISA, yeah, so we asked for expedited review, but technically they have 30 days, so that would be until the 12th. But I asked for expedited review because of the urgency. So they're aware of the September 5th hearing. And as far as the other permit, the WM15, they should be hearing back on that anytime, because I believe that's a 30-day from the filing, so.
Thank you.
No later than April, certainly. All right, Brittany, anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Anybody in the audience? Anybody on Zoom? All right, so if I could get again, we are going to have to continue this. This is to the 5th? Are we aiming 6th, 5th? 5th, right? So we need to continue to the 5th of September, and so do I have a motion to continue to September 5th solely for receiving natural heritage and endangered species comment and comment from DMF?
Scouring? Should we? Answer?
And will you be able to get that information to us as part of it?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
two. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. I'll go with that.
Thank you very much.
See you in a few minutes.
Hopefully, just a few. Oops.
Guess we could have done that right next, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Um,
Made a mistake.
All right. Next order of business is a continued notice of intent for SE 83-2431, Great Island Homeowners Association, 0 Great Island Road. This is an NOI filing for emergency sandbag reinforcement of a barrier and coastal dune barrier and coastal beach and land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Thank you, Brenda.
You all set?
All set. Through the chair.
Yeah, go.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Brian Wall. I'm an attorney with an office in Sandwich, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Great Islands Homeowners Association. And together with me is the Woods Hole Group being represented tonight by Chris Gloninger, who's to my left. And we also have Leslie Fields, I believe, on Zoom. She couldn't be physically here, but she's here and hoping to participate. I also want to mention that there are representatives from the association here. Cynthia Richards is here, Malcolm Kent, also Will Patty, the treasurer, and Craig Fleming, the caretaker. So as the commission probably recalls, we've been before you previously. Great Island Road was damaged in a storm back in December 18th, 2023. The damage was significant, so the applicant sought permission on an emergency basis to protect the road and restore the damaged areas. The emergency work involved placing geotextile bags filled with sand in areas where the dune was significantly compromised and where the road needed protection. The second phase of the project involved placing sand over the bags to create a slope in front of the bags to mimic a dune. The emergency certificate that was issued required a filing of an after-the-fact notice of intent in order to obtain an order of conditions. So the association, working with Woods Hole Group, prepared and filed a notice of intent in April, seeking after-the-fact permission for the work that was performed. When the DEP issued the file number, it also transmitted some comments that were of concern to us. Specifically, the comment said that the geotextile bags may be considered a coastal engineering structure and may not be able to be permitted on the dune. So we appeared in front of you on June 20th to ask for a continuance so that we could look into the matter. And since then, we did. And what I have done is done some research, which I'd like to talk about with the commission shortly. When I finish, Mr. Gloninger will go through a brief presentation about the merits and the substance of the project. And if it's okay with the commission, Mr. Kent would like to say a couple of words on behalf of the association. So regarding the DEP's comment, the first thing that I did was I performed some research. So one of the things that I have available to me is that when the DEP handles what's called adjudicatory proceedings, so if an applicant or an aggrieved party does not like a decision from the commission, the party can appeal to the DEP for what's called a superseding order. And if the party is aggrieved by that order, you can go to a further process called an adjudicatory hearing, where the DEP actually holds kind of a mini trial and issues a decision about it. And I have a database that I'm allowed and able to research all the decisions from the DEP. And I tried to find if there's been any case on a geotextile bag, and I came up empty. I could not find a single decision about that. So what that tells me is that the comments from the DEP are essentially an opinion. It's not an official decision of the DEP. It's an opinion. And so I also have an opinion on behalf of the association, and I set that forth in a rather detailed letter, which I'll just summarize briefly here tonight. Whenever one starts to determine whether or not something is a coastal engineering structure, you start at the definition. And the definition, which is included in my letter, says, a coastal engineering structure means, but is not limited to, a breakwater, a bulkhead, a groin, a jetty, a revetment, a seawall, a riprap, etc. You have regulations where you've also defined that term, and it's essentially identical to the state definition. So when a definition defines a thing or an object by listing examples like this definition does, when a court has to interpret that, the court looks at the examples and interprets and applies the definition to those examples that are obviously expressly set forth in the definition, but this one is not. And so then when you get beyond that, courts interpret definitions that are defined by a list of items by saying, is the thing at issue like the list or not like the list? And if it's like the list, it incorporates it and applies the definition. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And so in this particular instance, I looked at the definition, and in practice before commissions, we tend to use words like hard solutions and soft solutions. Those terms aren't necessarily set forth in the regulations, but we banter them about. And hard solutions are things that are like the definition, a breakwater or a bulkhead. Bulkheads are made of steel or vinyl or wood. A revetment is made of rock. In this particular instance, what we're talking about is a geotextile bag filled with sand. It's non-structural by its definition, and our contention is that it's more like a soft structure than a hard structure. Another distinguishing feature is coastal engineering structures tend to be permanent. You build a riprap or a jetty or a seawall, and it's intended to stay there permanently, whereas soft solutions are intended to address the erosion problem but kind of go away over time. And examples of that would be like a Corey fiber roll array or a Corey envelope. And the bags in this particular instance are very much like that. They're there, they're not meant to be permanent. In fact, the notice of intent is specifically asking for temporary permission. Part of our application is that we're seeking to do after the fact approval for these bags so that they can stay there from 1 to 5 years so that the association can develop a long-term solution about what to do about the road. And Mr. Gloninger can talk about that further. So essentially what it kind of comes down to is that the bags, in our opinion, are like a soft solution. They're temporary in nature. And also critical is that the sloped sand in front of them mimics a dune. So it's very unlike a hard bulkhead or a revetment, which is intended to break up the water. And finally, I'd just like to, under the category of other considerations, I think it's important that the commission review this application in its context. This is an after-the-fact application for something that's already there that was lawfully permitted under an emergency certificate. And so if the commission, which I hope it's not going to do, decides to go with the DEP's opinion rather than ours, we have to look at the fact that the bags will have to be removed, and that in and of itself will be very disruptive. Whereas what we're asking for is temporary permission to keep the bags there until we can come up with a permanent solution. So again, I would ask you that you look at it from a temporary perspective. And just to underscore the temporary nature of our application, we also think the commission, if it has any concerns about it, can address those concerns through conditions. So for example, one of the conditions, and they're outlined in my letter, and Chris is going to talk about them too, is that the bags can be monitored regularly. They can be specifically monitored after a storm. If they break up, there can be a condition that says no new geotextile bags will be installed, so that the commission can be assured of itself that this is a temporary solution. In summary, I think that if you look at the way that I've analyzed it, I think the board can be very comfortable deciding that this is not a coastal engineering structure and can be permitted through this process. And having said that, I'm available for questions, but I'd like to turn it over now to Chris to go through the merits of the application.
Thank you, Brian. Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, Brittany, thank you for your time, and I can't believe it's been nearly 6 months since we saw you, since I saw you last. I know that you've seen our team since then, but the bags essentially did their job. After we met, there were 2 sister sou'easter storms that tested the stretch of shoreline adjacent to the road, and the road remained intact. And when I went to survey that stretch with former Captain Huck before his retirement, he had big concerns about the condition of the road following the December storm and his department being able to respond to that an emergency if one were to have occurred on the island. So just to recap the work that we did, I won't belabor this, we'll get to the point and what we're looking and charting a path forward. But the work that we did was largely northeast of the S-curve, about 810 feet. We tried to find the areas where there was natural protection so we could avoid using the 1 cubic yard sandbags where possible. And you might remember that we tried a fairly exhaustive search to find natural alternatives to the bags at the time. But there was a big backlog in supply. But we'll go over that in a second, what we have hopefully for a plan going forward. South of the S-curve, a little bit closer to the roadway, we had 110 feet of section that was very vulnerable. And the big concern was the only access road for not just the residents, but for first responders in the event of a medical or fire emergency. So let me try to get to the next. These were pictures before the bags were implemented of the scarp, anywhere from 3 to as much as 4 feet. A little bit difficult here, but if you can see the mouse, the roadway is here. So those 2 twin sou'easters the following week would have likely eroded to or maybe past that roadway. Let me see here. So the emergency work included a total of 350 cubic yard bags filled with sand, covered with sand, mimicking, as Brian mentioned, the natural dune. The compatible sand was also filled, was used as fill for the bags. And any displaced bags, thankfully there weren't. We had a plan, a contingency plan, and we were doing our due diligence to make sure that any bags would be removed, any damaged bags would be removed. All bags were linked together to make sure, as another fail-safe, that the bags would not deteriorate and break apart, leaving plastic elements either into the ocean environment or the marsh behind. Those protective measures worked. The bags are intact to this day, and that is excellent news that the environmental precautions worked out. An aerial view of the sections that we worked in. This is the northern section, the much smaller southern section. Again, there are some more natural protections here, some larger boulders that are near that southern area. We weren't protecting it against flooding. We were protecting it, and it's an important point to make, we were protecting it against erosion and losing the roadway. We anticipated that the road would flood, which it did do, but there was no damage left behind from those storms. As long as the bags are in place, when it comes to permanent impacts, you're looking at 26,262 square feet. But once the bags are removed, then those permanent impacts are no longer an issue. And Natural Heritage had no take, and they made the recommendation that they would restrict the time of work on this site, with no work happening between March 1st and August 31st. So that was their take when they gave us their response to our NOI. So the alternatives that we're looking at and looked at the time was do nothing, which again could have potentially lost the road with erosion with those 2 more storms. The due nourishment would have just likely ended up with a lot of sand ending back up into the ocean environment. Instead, the sandbags have held and maintained a large volume of sand instead of it going back out into the ocean, which would then reduce the amount of truck traffic to and from in renourishing after subsequent storms. Again, the geotextile bags are covered with sand, and the idea is moving forward, we would have a solution in place. We would stockpile a natural alternative. So if a bag fails, it would not be replaced with another geotextile bag. The bag would be replaced with a natural alternative, and the damaged bag would be removed. So I just wanted to stress that as well. Going forward, and this is the last slide, what we're proposing, the recommended conditions are monitoring and kind of beefing up the amount of what we do out there. Inspect the storms with photos that we could send to the commission within 2 days of the storm. Keeping the sandbags covered with that amount of sand, the 2,090 cubic yards of beach-compatible sand twice annually to make sure that the bags are covered up to prevent any UV degradation. The nourishment would occur between March 1st and August 31st. Again, the bags would be removed if they were damaged, replaced by a natural alternative. The replaced sandbags, again, we would not allow any new additional geotextile bags in their place. We mentioned the study. That was the big part of our presentation on January 5th. It has been complex. It's been a very detailed process in trying to find the best path forward for an important part of the Yarmouth community. So our short-range plan would be to work on another, perhaps, notice of intent that would allow us to almost have a playbook going forward that would stockpile compatible sand, stockpile natural alternatives, so when new vulnerabilities open up, we would be able to implement those in the event of another coastal storm like we saw last winter. As a meteorologist, this winter pattern, we're not able to tell the number of storms, where the storms will hit, but we know patterns, and the pattern is exactly similar to what we had last year, which is conducive to storms with a predominantly southeasterly flow. The intermediate to long-range plan is finding protection against high tide flooding and low-energy storms that produce erosion-related issues. The things that we are looking at include raising sections of roadway, retreating sections of roadway, and replacing the bridge that we currently have in place. The chairman mentioned the bags would probably settle, and they have settled into the scarp. And what we fear is undermining the protection that we've seen for the last 6 months. They've established themselves quite nicely as that added protection along the scarp. And it is our intent in this short term to keep them covered, again, with that compatible sand. The permitting will take time. The design will take time. to get a consensus on what alternative that the association picks going forward will take time, but that we're working very hard with the homeowners association to find their best path forward. And we just need some time. This is not a permanent fix. This is not a Band-Aid on a bigger issue. This is just temporary. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. Is this on? My name is Malcolm Kent. I'm a Great Island resident and an association board member, and I've been working closely with the Woods Hole Group on this resiliency feasibility study.
Maybe actually if you could pick it up.
Sure. And so you've heard the legal and technical. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I think if you hold it.
Pick it up.
Yeah, if you could.
Okay. Sorry, get a little shorter. The legal and the technical aspects of our submission, and you'll appreciate how difficult a situation we've found ourselves in. And we're taking it very seriously, and we're doing all we can to deal with it in the most efficient way with a minimum of disruption to the environment. And the bags have worked really well. As Chris said, they've protected our access to the island through several storms, and so we sincerely hope you will allow us to keep them as a temporary condition with all the conditions and monitoring that we've suggested, and help us as we develop a more permanent solution. Thank you.
That's our presentation. If we have any questions, we're available.
Would you like to go first?
We're out there on Monday, right? Yeah. And you mentioned a couple of things that I just a little confused about, and so bear with me. First of all, you mentioned that they're covered, but that there was a section, if I remember correctly, of uncovered bags. You just could see the whole bag with sand in it. I don't know if we have a picture of that or not. Yeah, like that. Certainly, I don't count that as covered bags.
No, but with the natural heritage guidelines, we can't get back out and nourish until the deadline is passed.
So
the intention
your
is
intent is
correct.
to go out and do that as it looks further down the road?
Correct.
Okay, so that's question one. Question two, and bear with me. In one part of your letter, you wrote, it remained in place approximately 2 years, and in another part, you said, and you verbally said, Attorney Wall, 1 to 5 years. So which one is it, 2 years or 1 to 5 years?
Without being facetious, it's a moving target because the scope of the long-term solution continues to kind of grow. And so we made the initial ask, and I think that we're now thinking it might take a little bit longer.
Okay, so I know this isn't part of what happened, but we've been out there as a commission since before Brittany came on with various issues. It just seems like it's taking a long time to come up with a permanent plan that has been going on for, well, I've been on the commission now, I don't know, 5 years, so it's got to be 5 years. So I'm just a little bit put off, to be honest with you, that it's taking so long to come up. I think your three possibilities, and I can't think of any others, but are there. But somewhere, I think, we need to see a plan. At least I need to see a plan. I'll speak for myself. Okay. Yeah.
Commissioner, I think that we'll be ready to show some of those plans. We are in the final stages of our report and our analysis. As I said, collecting the data that we've had to go through has taken a team effort of all of Woods Hole Group, even people that weren't originally part of this project, because it is so incredibly complex. So you are aware, the answers to that question will be coming soon, and we will be able to provide those designs and those plans and the path forward.
And if I could add to that, Mr. Bernstein, so my involvement is much more recent. I can't speak to what happened before, but what I can tell you is since I was retained, I think I was retained in the spring, April-ish or May, the people that I'm working with, many of whom are here tonight, are taking this very seriously. They've committed the funds. They've hired an excellent consulting firm to go forward. They are doing everything that they can to move forward. I would also just simply add, too, that the association represents 43 different property owners that we have to keep informed. And the long-term solutions that we're talking about are going to cost in the millions of dollars. So I do appreciate your comment, I do. But I would just suggest to you that, at least with my involvement, they're going forward full steam ahead.
Okay. This is my confusion. On the page 2, you have a sentence, DEP transmitted the file number, all that stuff, that sand-filled geotextile bags are considered coastal engineering structures. And then you have the analysis, coastal engineering structures means, but is not limited to, and a list.
Right.
I'm really confused, this is me, but how can textile bags be considered engineering, coastal engineering structures, and then you're saying I'm just confused by the two sentences.
So
It sounds like it should say they're not considered to be coastal engineering.
Well, and that's why I wrote the big letter. So what happens when a notice of intent is filed with you, a copy is simultaneously filed with the DEP. And years ago, they simply issued a file number. I don't think they even really looked at the file, but with going back a few years now, they've started to conduct a preliminary review, and it's not unusual for them to have a few comments here and there. And so the quote at the top of my page is from the comments the DEP wrote on the transmittal of the file number, and whoever reviewed it raised the issue and said that these bags are considered coastal engineering structures and that it appears that they don't meet the performance standards. That's why we asked for the continuance the last time, because we were surprised by that. And what I've quoted below in the further part of the page, the stuff that's in italics, the language that's in italics, that is the definition in the state regulations, and the one below that is the definition in your bylaw, your town regulations. And my argument to the commission is that if you look at the definition, geotextile bags do not appear. So if they were there, clearly we couldn't argue that the bags were not a structure, but they're not there. And this is what I gave my presentation on. When a court is called on to interpret an interpretation, a definition, that the definition is a list of terms rather than, if you go to, let's say, the zoning bylaw and you look up at the word structure, it will say something like a man-made assemblage of items that have a fixed point on the ground. There'll be a definition, and then you can say, well, is that a structure or is that not a structure? Here, the definition of coastal engineering structure, it's defined by examples. And so when a court has to look at that, the court looks at the examples and says, well, the thing that I have to determine, whether it's in or out of the definition, is it like the terms or not like the terms? And our contention is as I said, a coastal engineering structure, all the examples are hard structures that break up waves that are meant to be permanent. And our contention is our solution is much more soft. And I got into a few details. For example, I think you probably have had it before you. I've been involved in other projects in other towns with what's called a Corey fiber array. And so that particular type of solution is a coconut-filled netting that is affixed to the ground with stakes, and it's anchored into the bank with these helical metal anchors with cables. That is deemed a soft solution and is not a coastal engineering structure. In fact, Seth Wilkinson has a patent on it so that it can be used as a soft solution, and it's not a coastal engineering structure. So my whole position here is simply that if you look at what the bag is, it's a bag filled with sand. It's not structural in nature. It's not even anchored in like the Corey fiber array roll, which is not a structure. And so our contention is that if you interpret that definition with regard to what we're proposing, I think you can permit it. I disagree with the DEP's comment.
Okay. So when it says, but not limited to, that tells me that there are other possibilities.
And I agree. I'm not simply saying it's only those things listed. What I'm saying is that when the definition, the term is defined by a list of examples, then we have to interpret that, and we have to say, is the thing being proposed like those examples or not like? And I think if you look at those, a breakwater, that's a rock jetty. A bulkhead, that can be a steel or vinyl or pressure-treated lumber, vertical wall that breaks up water. A groin is a stone structure, a jetty, a revetment. We're talking about a sand-filled bag. And again, part of our presentation, and it goes hand in hand, we're not asking for this to be permanent. We're asking for it to be temporary. We're asking for conditions that says if any of the bags fail, they're not to be replaced. And eventually they will come out when the permanent solution comes along.
Brian, I do want to jump in because I said that it was complex, and I want to give just one example. When you look at the problem and you see the sound right in front of the roadway, you think that this is the issue. But in bringing our team on, one of the issues that has made this so incredibly complex is the vulnerability in flood pathways through Uncle Robert's Cove. What was something that we thought was a problem a handful of times per year, when that section of roadway is inundated, it has turned into dozens. We put in an overland flood gauge, which allows us to show depth, inundation, frequency, magnitude. That definitely threw a curveball into this process, which has made it more complex and has certainly kind of delayed the designs of our alternatives.
Okay. Do you have any idea how the rate of degradation, or how fast these bags degrade? Has anybody ever done a study on that?
I'm not a scientist, so I'm going to confess that right up front. My understanding is the idea of covering them is to protect them from UV radiation so that they don't deteriorate.
Okay.
But if they do get exposed, they can deteriorate either through UV or through wind, where they whip around. But that's why what we're suggesting as far as conditions is a constant monitoring program, and if any pieces of the bag do come loose, that they be picked up immediately.
Okay.
I'm also not a scientist, but I did do a little research on the Google, and the real problems with degradation are in the south, like in Florida, where you have heavy UV radiation more constantly than we have up here.
Okay, that's it for me for now. Thank you.
So the geotextile bag is not supposed to break down as long as it's covered. And if it's not supposed to break down, then it seems to me like it's similar to a rock. So I don't see how you can say, I mean, I get your opinion. I guess my opinion would be to agree that a geotextile bag is, in fact, a coastal engineering structure. It's designed, I mean, what's the purpose of a revetment? The purpose of a bulkhead is to absorb and deflect wave energy. What is the purpose of these bags?
They're part of an erosion control structure.
Erosion control meaning what?
To prevent erosion of the road. And
Well,
again,
actually, how are they doing that? They're deflecting.
Yeah,
they're doing the same job as a.
But so does a Corey fiber roll array.
But those are
But the Corey fiber
biodegradable.
array breaks down, and the geotextile bag does not.
And I'm not going to argue that point because I think you're right about that. I agree with you.
So again, that's why I'm saying it goes back to the idea that then how do you say it's not?
Because our
essentially
application is for temporary relief. In other words, we're telling you that these bags need to stay there for 1 to 5 years, but they will come out as part of the permanent solution. And so I think if you look at that, if you combine those two things intellectually, we can reach the point where they can be approved.
Well, I tend not to. I'm a little bit more skeptical about the 1 to 5 years. I mean, I understand that's what you're saying, and I understand there are complex patterns that go into trying to figure all this out. But at the same time, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we knew what had to be done, It was one of those three solutions the long-term solutions that you put up. And 5 years ago, what had to be done were the same three long-term solutions. Those were the three options. And now we're here 5 years later, and it's the same three, and now you're telling me in 1 to 5 years, that's what you're going to come up with. You're going to have to look at one of those and decide one of those things.
Let me clarify, though.
But there's nothing forcing you to do that.
Well, you can put a condition on the permit that you're giving, because we have to come back with a certificate of compliance, and you could put a temporal limitation on this. But also, let me just clarify, when we're talking about the 1 to 5 years, that we're talking about designing, permitting, and implementing. And so we'll be back before you much sooner with a notice of intent so that you'll see what we're doing. So we're not asking for another 5 years to come back and say, oh, we need another 5 years. And just one kind of comment of a personal nature, again, not disputing that things should have been done sooner, but I've lived here most of my life, and I've never seen the southeast storm in the winter like that last one. And I've had other clients too. I have several clients in Dennis involved with permitting, and what it did, my phone was ringing off the hook, and I'm not an ER doctor. I can't come running out and fix things, but I had numerous clients call me with unprecedented damage to the beach. So people respond to crises, and that's happening now.
But with all due respect, the problem with this road happened before December of 2023. We were out there again a couple of years ago where somebody had brought in rocks and sand without our permission, and that was a different type of storm. So my guess is, even though I know the storm was different, my guess is that even a nor'easter, it seems to be affecting the road.
Yeah, so it's definitely changing things all over the place.
Yeah.
But again, I think we're here.
Sorry.
We're-
Respond to that. That was in December of 2022, I believe. And a storm came in and eroded a great deal of the dune. And in that emergency situation, sand was put on the beach without proper permission. We came in and dealt with you.
Right, well, I'm not saying it wasn't dealt with, but
Beg your pardon?
I'm not saying it wasn't dealt with, I'm just saying that,
That was the first of the major storms that hit us.
And that was a sou'easter also. wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Then we piled, then the next year, we got this much larger area that was eroded, including the sand that had been put on in the previous thing. So this is a situation that clearly is getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
It wasn't at that critical situation in our eyes, even though we knew something needed to be done. It suddenly has become very critical in the last few years.
And we're hoping that the commission sees this and sees what we're doing and would help us, and see this as a transitional, this is kind of a bridge from point A to point B, not a permanent solution.
And the next short range, and hopefully the next NOI we follow, is that playbook going forward, that when the bags, there is degradation or they're damaged, they're not replaced with another geotextile bag, they're replaced with a natural alternative, and then we have a stockpile of those materials. So if there's new vulnerabilities while we're in this selection phase, permitting phase, we can implement those going forward. So that is our next step.
And I think we all said this, but Chris reminded me of that too. I think you said it in your opening. When the emergency cert was applied for, the intent was to do natural bags, but we couldn't find them. And the commission did allow the geotextile bags, which we appreciate. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have, but we're kind of stuck where we are, having invested a substantial amount of time and money, and we're just simply asking that they be permitted after the fact for a period of time until we can come back with another notice of intent.
Have you been out and found if there are other kind of bags available now?
We are looking more at the Quar rolls and envelopes as an alternative to bags. I mean, we're thinking about the possibility of burlap bags, but material obviously will kind of flush out a lot more in that case than with the Quar rolls.
Well,
The envelopes be able to be deployed in a similar way, or are they much bigger?
That's what we're trying to figure out with our team to design. something going forward that makes sense and can be easily deployed. And we could also kind of bring in sections if one of those geotextile bags fails. We could swap that out.
Okay, so if you found those, you would be willing to swap those out, particularly after they're exposed?
Yeah, absolutely. That was our intention.
So if you could answer, I have a couple of questions that confuse me. First of all, looking at the DEP definition of engineering structure versus what we have in our code, we add erosion. How do you think that impacts the definition or what you're trying to do?
So you certainly do add erosion, whereas the state does not. But all of the other examples that are given in that definition are the same as the state. They're hard structures.
Most erosion aren't hard, are they?
No, but the definition here does. It starts off almost the same as the state. It says any bulkhead, revetment, seawall, riprap, jetty intended to prevent, and then you include erosion. But our whole argument is we don't get there because we're not a hard structure in the first instance. We're a soft structure.
I understand, and the court is the only one that's going to really decide that. The issue also goes up to where, in the first paragraph, well, second paragraph on that page 2, and you talk about what the DEP came back with. These are considered coastal engineering structures, and it appears that the project or proposed would not meet the performance standards for coastal dunes, which aren't permanent structures. So how do you worry about having a definition of structure when they themselves are not referring back to structures but to non-structural standards?
Well, I'm focusing in on the coastal engineering structure comment. We believe that our presentation shows you that, except for that argument that's in dispute, the notice of intent meets the performance standards.
I guess I'm just thinking, it's sort of going in circles.
Well, I'll further add, I don't agree that it's in circles, because like I said, when you read the definition, there's two parts to it, and I'm focusing on the bylaw part now, your definition. The first part talks again about examples, any bulkhead, revetment, seawall, riprap, groin, jetty, or other structure intended, which is the second part, to prevent or alleviate storm damage, tidal action, wave action, erosion. I agree we're trying to prevent erosion, but I don't agree that we're part of the hard structure to begin with.
Well,
one other thing too that I'd like to add, I think I said it earlier too, we think the bags are very similar to the Corey fiber array because the whole way the array is done is it's covered with sand and it's sloped and it's made to mimic the natural landform. And that's what's happening here is the bags are to be covered and sloped to mimic a dune.
and that means that those bags could be there for a long, long, long time.
Except that we're fully conceding that they won't be. We're asking for a temporary permit.
In 5 years, what kind of limit do we want to put on?
Can I just say something about the biodegradability of these bags? They're not, and that's the difference with the Corey rolls. We're quite familiar with them. We've permitted them for quite a few places around here, and so you put them in, you put your sand in, and everything becomes, or hopefully, like will degrade and become like a sand dune. You're just going to be pulling these out. So whatever sand dune you've created or whatever your slope, you're just going to pull it out at that time. How about putting some biodegradable bags now, replacing these, and then you've got what you're looking for, and you won't be pulling them apart.
So two responses.
Even if you do it slowly, and
Yeah.
I want to finish what I'm saying a
Certainly.
little bit. This would work. I think it would work out with your situation. If you put those in at this point, it would at least give you that temporary time to come back with your solutions. And you even talk about one of your solutions would be putting the biodegradable bags in That was one of yours for of your long-term solutions.
Right.
So you're looking at that type of bag to begin with. I think you should come back with an idea of finding those bags. Because every time you're talking about covering these with a large amount of sand twice a year.
Right.
I mean, it's not ending anything because of the material, the geofabric.
So a couple of responses to that. Very, very good points. I think that when you look carefully at the Corey fiber roll, which is considered soft versus other hard solutions, it's not completely biodegradable. They have the metal duckbill or helical anchors. There's the cables. We don't have any of those. So I think
What's keeping your bags together? I heard you say that they're together, so they won't move. What keeps them together?
So they're tethered together
With what?
by hooks on the top.
The metal.
No, they're the same geotextile fabric that make the hooks, and then there's rope that ties them together as a failsafe in case they break apart. But I do want to bring up a point why we wouldn't be so open to just swapping it out right now, because if there's a road realignment that takes place, and that is the agreed upon scenario, then you're putting unnecessary quar logs and envelopes in areas where we might just be able to reestablish a natural alternative if the road is set back or raised to a certain elevation. So that is what we're trying to figure out in the interim, those sections of shoreline that might not need any of that additional protection, to try to limit it to whatever possibility that we can.
What are you looking at for right now? Just us to okay to leave those here?
for a temporary period of time, yeah. And again, I think that that's one of our arguments to the board.
1 to 3 years, I don't think is temporary. It's already been since 8 months or 9 months or
True.
10 months. They've been there.
So one of the things that we're hoping that you would consider is the human factor, that it costs a lot of money to put these bags in.
I understand.
It was intended originally to be burlap. We couldn't find them, so we are where we are in good faith lawfully, and we're asking for your help to keep them there for a little bit longer while we develop this solution. And maybe what you could do is, if you could see fit to giving the permit, put a schedule that says we have to come in with a notice of intent, within a certain amount of time, and we could provide you with what we think is a reasonable, I don't want to set a goal that we can't meet, but one that we could meet, and we could come back to show you progress that we're going forward with a notice. And then once we get that notice, we can go forward with the work. There will be other permits that will be needed as well, but once we get all the permits, we could go forward with the work.
But to Commissioner Frost's point, we would replace the bags if one were to fail immediately with the natural solution. So it's not like we're just filling up another.
What I said. I said if they are exposed.
Oh, they're exposed, okay.
I hope I said that.
You did.
Well, there's also some issues here that you haven't gotten together yet about the eelgrass monitoring and some things in the past for this situation. That was requested by DMF.
Yeah, so
in the beginning
DMF
of this.
included in their comments an eelgrass monitoring plan in addition to a revegetation plan, which wouldn't be feasible if we're going to be removing these bags temporarily. So that's why I agree with Commissioner Mulhern that the biodegradable bags would be able to establish something there that you would be able to plant into, whereas there's no point of planting into these.
Already on them.
I'm sorry?
There are plants already growing on them. It's really bizarre, but all along there are plants growing on this.
On the tops of the sandbags where there's nothing in between.
No plastic.
Plants have found their way, and even some beach grass. But also, I think that we're talking about the eelgrass monitoring plan. Wasn't that for the Fox Point huge beach nourishment? That had
It was for this one as well. It was for this one as well. Here's the DMF comment. Eelgrass, eelgrass is sensitive, and DMF recommends pre- and post-construction monitoring plan. They also requested a modeling estimates of offshore migration and transport of nourishment material to provide an estimate of impacts potentially that would be introduced to the nearshore eelgrass beds.
So this kind of segues to a question I have for the commission. Is this trying to assess where we are, and is this a matter where you have enough information to act? Is this a matter where we should ask for a continuance to come back with some additional information to address your comments and concerns? Can you help us understand where we are in the process?
I was going to ask some of the same thing. What is DEP's response going to be to our, if we approved an extension?
DEP has the ability to supersede an order of conditions that we issue if they do not agree, and them issuing a comment that states that this project does not meet the performance standards would indicate that they may do so.
And that, at some point, you either decide to go along with speeding up things, finding some other solution very quickly, or going to court. Is that it?
Right, and we're aware that the DEP may do that. We don't know that they're going to do that.
No.
Sure.
But they would have that right, and we would then have the right to go to an adjudicatory hearing and assert these arguments there. And then maybe there'll be a case on a geotextile bag. Yeah. But we're hoping not to have to do that. We're hoping that this board would see fit to giving us temporary approval, and we're hoping that the DEP will notice that it's temporary and not take any other action.
But how do you fight the point that Ed made and Pat brought up again, that it becomes permanent? The bag's covered by sand, act like a sand dune, which is, and
So I have two responses to that. It's not really permanent because it involves renourishment, and the client, the association, does not want that to be perpetual. There's a recognition that something dramatic has to change with the road realignment and location, and they're actively exploring that. They want a long-term solution, and so that's why the request is for temporary relief.
And how long what is the extension you're looking?
Well, we're looking for a permit to after the fact authorize this, which would be a 3-year permit.
3 year, okay.
That's what your orders of conditions are typically.
Forget.
What's a realistic timeline to get a permanent proposal?
Defer to Chris on that one.
The permittability is difficult for most of them, so it's working on logistics and design, and that is the next process. Well, the first process is having the community come together to agree upon a solution that makes sense to them, and then it is finding a contractor and an engineering firm that will be able to carry out and design these alternatives that we've developed over the last 6 to 8 months. So
But you really hasn't answered my question.
it would be.
How much time?
Well, let me go a different direction. If you have a plan that you are, you're trying to put together, identify what you could afford, identify what's feasible, get all the permits, do you have a timeline for doing this, an agreement of your owners that you could stick to that timeline, and could you come back to us with it?
I think we could. I mean, the stage we're at is that the feasibility study is in the final stages of the draft. That's going to be submitted to us within the month.
Yeah, by the end of the month.
Then going through it, then we need to bring our community, bring our homeowners on board and make a decision on which of the alternatives that Chris's firm has developed will be followed up, and then we'll have to start the design process.
Well, I'm talking about, okay, and then I'm talking about also extending the whole, so that you're coming back to us. This is voluntary, I presume, but coming back to us to identify the construction or all the other timelines. Because it's going to extend years out.
I think, what you're saying is that 3 years is not going to get it all done. They're going to have to come back for an extension if we approve a 3-year.
Well, I'm not so worried about that. If they couldn't come back for another 2, if they had proof of their agreement by the community, if they had bonds or whatever it takes to produce your own particular solution.
I mean, I think if we're demonstrating intent, we're demonstrating process, we're demonstrating commitment, we should be able to do that within 2 years easily. We may still have process to go through with permitting and everything, but we're definitely moving along the road.
And 3-year probably will end up turning into, next time, 6 months, a year, less. You know, in other words, as you come down and you don't really show that you've achieved what you achieved, we're going to tighten things up.
That's fair.
Is that,
And what are we going to do when comes 3 years and they haven't produced anything?
We have an NOI that was due 21 days after the emergency permitting.
well, yeah.
That was back in January.
Could I make a suggestion in this
Submitted
regard?
in April.
One of the things that when I'm involved in court litigation, when there's need for oversight, the court often asks that there be periodic reports filed. So if you see fit to give us a permit, you could require us to file a written report or even appear before you to report on progress so that you know that we're not going to take the 3 years and say, oh, we didn't get it done. We could report periodically to you on that.
The problem with this is that it puts a lot on us,
Yeah, going against the,
which we don't normally get involved with.
Ultimately, it comes down to the simple fact that you could give us progress reports all along and still, at the end of 3 years, not have anything to show for it. And we have nothing, we have no recourse for that.
But, you know, we don't really actually have 3 years because we have so much inundation and so much storm damage.
I mean,
that we really don't have any choice. We haven't had that up till now. We had king tides and some inconveniences, but we really actually, we have to make a decision. And we finally have homeowners agreeing that we have to make a decision, which has been hard. It's been a hard point to get to.
Well, I think you come to us with a solution when you have that solution that you'd like to be permitted, but I don't think it has anything to do with this, and I don't think it has anything to do with what we're trying to do today. I mean, ultimately, we have to decide on this particular notice. We can't, you know, I would not be comfortable making any long-term conditions for this as well, or making future permitting available for something as a matter of condition here. So that brings us back to what do we do for right now?
Well, I'm divided. I mean, I'm sympathetic towards your problem. We go out there often and, you know, whether it's checking, you know, a permit site, and then we go along this road, and I certainly can understand the problem. I've certainly kayaked enough times since I live in Lewis Bay, at Roberts Cove and the other cove, and see the issues. And I feel, you know, I know you need to come up with a permanent solution. My frustration is it's taking so long to get there. You mentioned 2022. We were out there before COVID with issues. That's how long it's been, you know, and that's the frustrating part about it, you know. And I understand you have to get 40-odd homeowners to agree on something, and you probably can't get them to agree what color to have the road. So I'm sympathetic to that, but I also have to think about what the effect is on the ecological aspect of all this, and the trust that something is going to happen, even though you say it's going to happen, because it hasn't happened, to be honest with you. So that's my frustration. You haven't been here as long as I have, but
I'm a newcomer.
yeah, but Pat certainly has. Yeah.
can we share the final report that Woods Hole Group has done with the board?
Share the
Can
final.
we share our feasibility study, what the alternatives that we're proposing when it's finalized with the commission?
That would be wonderful, but I'm not sure that would impact their vote for tonight. We definitely would like to see that. Provide any comments where we can shorten the hearing process for you.
So would it be possible to have a straw vote so we can decide what if this is looking like we might have a majority of the board in favor of this, or whether there might be a majority not in favor.
Well, I don't typically do straw votes, but
Never done that.
I think you can pretty much tell how I'm leaning, so.
Well, my question about what happens if we don't give you an extension?
It's not an extension, you're
It's not-
approving the,
Yeah, it's not an
extension.
extension,
That's
this
not
is just
extension.
an order.
In order here.
they would have to remove them.
What conditions can we put on the order that make us feel comfortable, I guess is my question.
Biodegradable option?
Yeah, I'd pull it out and put
The
put
biodegradable,
biodegradable,
and then
For these, the one
For
that
this-
you
for
can see,
this.
the ones that what about the ones you can't see, though? Would that
I mean,
add
I'm
more
willing to let
disruption?
those sit,
Yeah,
you know,
the ones that
as,
sit and totally open,
like that. I would let that sit personally, because it would take more
not ripping
worse
it up.
taking it out. But these, I'd like to see,
So they're only a tiny bit exposed. The larger array, there's some exposure at the end, but they're mostly covered on the other side.
There are some at the base.
It's a blurry picture. Yeah.
If the commission is going to kind of make a hybrid decision, would it be worthwhile to have an on-site meeting? I think that you can do that under the open meeting law, that you can have a quorum, have an on-site meeting in compliance with the law.
we can have an on-site meeting without making any decisions and any discussion. We can
Right.
just, without having an official meeting. As long as, if there are 3 of us there, we can't discuss
Right.
anything, but we can listen to everything. But-
Because there is a financial ramification of this, and so if we could have that input from you to decide on what may remain, if possible, and what may not, that would inform our decision-making process.
I think everything that's exposed.
I would like to see those replaced.
We need a revised plan for this.
you're looking to continue
Yes,
to see if they would,
a
if they're willing.
revised plan.
With biodegradable material.
I will tell you right now, that's the only way I'm even remotely considering voting for this, is if there's a biodegradable component to this, a significant biodegradable component. Otherwise, I'm prepared to vote no right now.
So for the 110-foot stretch,
That might help
Southwest.
DEP too.
So how long is this stretch?
810 feet. The smaller stretch is the one that was closest to the roadway that,
Yeah.
okay.
So you would have to consider how much, if any, of this array that's covered. Because that one is 800 feet long, the other one is only 100 feet long, which are fully exposed.
But both are, is what you're saying, right?
This tiny one is the one that's 100 feet long over here.
So the 800 feet, when we didn't see, I didn't see it all, but the part we did see, it was pretty packed down, wasn't it?
Yeah, the westward side is very fully covered, and I would say like 20% of it on the northern side in this photo is slightly exposed, but not as much as the other section. You can see about half to 3/4 of the bag on the front.
That's,
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, I still think it comes back to this whole idea, like, keeping geotextile bags there.
It's like a rock, yeah.
It's a rock.
Yeah, and it
They're
does
coastal
not,
engineering
it does
structure.
not meet the performance standards for coastal beach and dune. And so I think, yeah, you're still looking at replacing, right? At least,
All of them.
at least that's what I would say.
You're looking at replacing both sections, 100%.
But there,
The problem I have with that is that sometimes you're gonna take them out. If you've got them exposed and they're degrading more, but the others are not exposed, and if we would get an agreement that they would, as they become exposed or whatever, the whole thing get replaced, but when you take them out, you also disturb the bags. And I'd rather see them sit there and not become exposed, but once they do, then replace.
you're gonna put sand on it over and over again?
Well, I think that
Well,
the
no,
end.
No.
That's exactly what's in
No,
that
no.
plan.
So I understand that point. I think it's a good point. I don't believe that on any other situation, the board would approve something if it didn't meet the performance standards only temporarily. So we would always expect the performance standards to always be met in any sort of project that we see. And we wouldn't usually approve a project even if it doesn't meet it for a portion of the project. So I understand the disturbance is definitely a factor here, and they've been in there for a while. But if you applied that to another project, you would never apply that to a different project.
But it's, if I remember, when they put those stones in, didn't we end up allowing them to keep those large rocks, or we made them move them out? I forgot.
They didn't put stones, they just put sand.
They put what?
I think they only did sand.
You're talking about the illegal.
Yeah.
There was rocks.
It was
There were
doing
rocks,
the illegal.
large
Oh.
rocks. We allowed them to keep them because we were worried about, it would be more disturbing to take them out, more of a disturbance to take them out. And I think that's my feeling about this section. That would be more disturbance to take it out. They could work harder to cover what's ever at the very end there, or maybe take that part out. I can't tell how much is exposed from the picture, but the other section, certainly, they should be able to replace. This is where I'm coming from. I'd be willing to vote to allow that to stay and the other to be taken out.
About a
One way or
2-year,
the other, we need a revised plan. So are we voting tonight or continuing this?
I'd like to continue, I think, to get a
Yeah,
revised
I was gonna
plan,
say,
and maybe by
I get
then,
the sense that you'd like to continue and see what they can offer. And I'm gonna be upfront and tell you, it's like I tend to agree with DEP on this one, and in the current form, it does not meet performance standards. I had that concern back when you came before us and you said you couldn't find the soft bags. And shame on me, I let myself be convinced by you and other people to allow you to do that, because I was thinking it's gonna be a temporary solution, but, so shame on me, but I'm not gonna do it again, so. That's just but you still have 3 more people, and I assume Paul will be willing to Mullinize himself so he can vote next time as well. So that's where you are.
Okay, so that was one of my questions, whether you've adopted the Mullen rule. So you
Yep.
have, okay.
Yep.
So if we're looking at a continuance, what is it? I want to make sure I understand it. So we're looking at coming back with potentially a proposal to maintain some and then change out others into biodegradable? And do we want to have that on site, or have you felt like you've told us the areas that are of concern?
I don't think I need an on-site,
Okay.
much as I enjoy going out there.
Yeah. Okay, with that being said, then, on behalf of the applicant, we'd like to ask for a continuance.
To the 5th of September?
Well, let me ask how much time you're going to need.
I can do it on the 5th.
The 5th is kind of tight.
Next
They have
is,
to do a design too, our team.
The 19th then?
You guys can do it for that? Okay.
How about the 19th?
19th?
Yeah.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue to September 19th?
So moved.
second,
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time. I know this is a
Thank you.
long one.
I'm bleeding like a pig here.
Chris, don't.
Right, Next order of business is a notice of intent for SE 83-2442, Town of Yarmouth, 316, 669, 674, 700, 728, Route 28. As proposed gravity sewer crossing beneath the Parkers River and 3 pumping stations inland under the ocean, riverfront area, land subject to coastal storm flowage, coastal bank, and buffer zones. And again, we are still without natural heritage and DMF comment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
No natural heritage for this one.
Oh, there's no natural heritage for this
Oh,
one.
have we got a
Okay.
DP file number?
No, yes, there's both for this one.
Pardon?
I think there's both for both. Yeah. Sorry. Gotta go back to
No.
my.
Not for this.
Okay.
Well, I didn't submit it to natural, it's a DMF.
Sorry.
Let's resolve that then at some point between the next,
I could double check the map, but, am I right?
Do you want the mouse, or do you want me to?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Mike Judici from CDM Smith. I'm here with Maggie Lofsted from CDM Smith as well. So this NOI is for a portion of 2 contracts that are in phase 1, again, of the
You could scroll or use the arrows up
Can I
top
scroll?
too.
It's not letting me. Oh, there we go. Opposite way. Thank you. 2 contracts, contracts 5 and 6 of Phase 1. So our earlier discussion revolved around Contract 3, which is shown in green on the figure, the area along South Shore Drive, and a portion of Route 28 that's currently under construction. Contract 2 is shown in yellow, also currently under construction. Those are both covered under both the previous NOI submittal and an RDA for the pipeline work and the streets. Contract 4 shown in the blue to the east at the Bass River Bridge area was just bid recently. It was actually out of Concom jurisdiction. So the subject of this NOI is for the 2 remaining contracts between Parkers River and the Barnstable Town Line. As part of that area design, we have 3 wastewater pumping stations, the first of which is located near Mill Pond, out in this area. The second one, and that one is actually outside of the 100-foot buffer, so is not included in the submittal. Pumping station number 2 next to the bog area at Mill Creek, and pumping station 3 down at the Riverwalk Park site. In addition, there is a proposed crossing of the Parkers River at that location as well on 28. So we'll start with pumping station 2. Again, this is down near Mill Creek at the bog area, across from Standish Way. The existing site is essentially a paved and graveled parking lot. We're proposing to install a submersible pumping station at this location. I'll show you the site plan, might be easier to see. So Route 28 is across the bottom of the sheet. The bog area is up in this vicinity. So this is the proposed site. Working from left to right, this is the wet well where the gravity sewers will convey the wastewater collected along Route 28 to a well where we have submersible pumps. Those pump through the second, again, these are below-grade structures with maybe a 6-inch stick-up. Second structure is a valve vault. There's a series of valves and a force main pipe that will come out through there into this third structure up near the road. That's a meter vault. So there's a meter there that will measure the flow that's being pumped up, and it'll be pumped to the east to a gravity sewer up at Higgins Crowell Road. There's a control building associated with this, and it houses electrical equipment to operate the pumps. And behind the control building is, and shown in the dark rectangle, is an emergency generator. We also have an area designated for potential future odor control equipment should it be needed. The control building is 16 and a half feet by, it's right there. 11 and a half by 17 feet, I'm sorry. Just to give you a sense of what, so it's essentially a shed-type structure. So for this site, we did include a stormwater report in the submittal. Site does comply, the design does comply with Mass Stormwater standards. Basically, the back half of the site, for the most part, will be handled with infiltration through the gravel area to be installed, and the front half of the site, more or less, will be handled by a small bioretention area to be installed between. There is a little access driveway in the site between the structures and Route 28. So there's a bioretention area proposed for this area to handle that portion of the site stormwater. And that will overflow eventually down into the bog area.
Yeah, so the
west.
stormwater will be contained on it'll be contained on the site. If it's the overflow will go back to the bog. And the gravel area, I believe, yeah, it's in the stormwater report. The TSS is at the 80% for the gravel area, 90% for the bioretention. And should we talk about the since this site is partially within the land subject to coastal storm flowage, so we have to raise the grade up to 13 feet. So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So the 100-year flood elevation in this area is elevation 11. So we have to have our critical equipment associated with the pumping station 3 feet above that 100-year flood, so it's elevation 14. So we've tried to minimize the amount of fill we have to, and grading we have to do on the site. So the area is essentially graded to around elevation 13, and then with the foundation for the concrete, for the control building, to get that first floor up to elevation 14, it's just going to be raised above the existing grade, or the proposed grade at that point, to get to elevation 14.
So yeah, we do have some permanent impacts in the land subject to coastal storm flowage at that site. And that was what the variance request.
Can I just quickly ask, what happens when the bog is flooded? And how does that affect anything?
No, and you can see from the existing pictures, so there's a retaining wall here, and I didn't point that out. So this is the site looking from 28 out toward the bogs. So you can see here's the paved parking area. And there's this retaining wall here. So that picture is taken from the right in this photo. So the bog area is at a much lower elevation here, beyond the retaining wall. So when that gets flooded, it doesn't impact the parking lot at this point. Question. And for pumping station 3, as I indicated, that's going to be located at the Riverwalk Park site. And that site already had a stormwater report done for it. And it included what was originally proposed for this site, for this pumping station. So what we've shown here is we've made some revisions to the design of the site, including the size of the building. Originally, when that stormwater report was done for the Riverwalk Park project, the control building for the pumping station was 40 feet by 50 feet. We've since reduced that to 40 feet by 24 feet, so we've cut that building almost in half. In addition, as shown in the table, so you can see the roof area has been reduced substantially, and the access driveway and parking area, if you will, is smaller as well. So it's about a 30% reduction in the impervious area over what was included in the original stormwater report. And again, similar situation here. This is within the 100-year floodplain. Existing grades are on elevation 8. So to get the equipment associated with the pumping station above that 100-year floodplain, 3 feet above, we do have to grade the site up by several feet to get up to elevation 14. And then again, we'd be utilizing the stormwater system, infiltration system that was already designed as part of the park, again with a smaller impervious area, so that is sized appropriately to handle the new design of the site. And just quickly an overview of the site plan. So this is, again, Route 28, the top of the sheet. The driveway access road for the new park project is to the left of the site. We have plantings, to help screen the pumping station, both along that western side and the eastern side and along 28. This is the control building that I mentioned here, roughly 24 by 40 feet. The wet well, again, this is similar as pumping station 2, a submersible type station. So wet well here, valve vault, meter vault, and then force main going out to the wastewater facility up on Buck Island Road. And then lastly, again, we talked about the resiliency, mitigation measures, typical compost logs, spill control. And then another component of the project included in the submittal, so the flow from the area east of Parker's River needs to get across the river to go to this pumping station number 3 that will again convey flow up to the water resource recovery facility. And the method we're pursuing or have chosen to get that flow is what we call a siphon under Parker's River. So this would be proposed for the area north of the new bridge. There are 2 siphon pipes, a 6-inch and a 10-inch are proposed, 6-inch to handle low flow, and then the 10-inch overflow for higher flows once more areas are connected. The intent is to install this using horizontal directional drilling, HDD, which is a trenchless technology, where a drill rig would start on one side of the river, drill underneath the river, and attach to pipe. This is again high-density polyethylene pipe, HDPE pipe, plastic pipe, that will be then pulled back through the drill hole by the rig, and then process repeated again for the second siphon. And then the last is just a summary.
You mentioned the work areas for the HDD that they're previously disturbed.
Yeah, so the way this will work is the way we've envisioned this. The drill rig will start on the western side of the river. If you're familiar, this Captain Parker's restaurant is here. There's an access driveway here to the Pirate Museum. There's a gravel area here that's used for parking for people that fish along the river and at the dock. So that would be the work area, an extended area around that vicinity in both the grassed area behind the access road, and we do have to install a structure in that parking area. So that's the work area on the western bank. On the eastern bank, this is a town park. If you're familiar with it, there's a walking trail in here and some benches. This is all previously disturbed, so we'd utilize that area as the work area on the eastern side of the river.
And we placed the work areas above the coastal bank. We made sure of that we're not altering any coastal bank. But we are in the 35-foot zone, in the 50-foot zone. So that's a variance that we're requesting for that. Do you want to talk about why we can't go on the south side, just to explain to the commission, maybe?
Well, the intent here was this is town-owned property, so we wanted to take advantage of that. It was a little tighter on the south side. It would have been a shorter crossing, but with the other facilities, the building and the parking area, we needed additional room in order to make the drill work. There are certain parameters that the drill rig can drill, certain angles that they can carry that you need to make sure are available to do the drilling.
And we also have filed as Chapter 91 for Chapter 91 license with Mass DP Waterways for that crossing, and also A pre-construction notification with the U.S. Army Corps or U.S. Army Corps of Engineers under Section 10. This is just a summary of the wetland impacts.
How soon do you expect to hear from them?
Well, we filed, it was 3 months ago or something, so you should be seeing it very shortly. The public notice ended, was it the beginning of August, I believe?
June.
Oh, okay,
So we're past the public notice time.
yeah.
Yes.
And there was no public notice for the PCN, for the Army Corps of Engineer permit.
Any questions?
It's all so simple.
If only.
Brittany, anything?
No, no questions.
Anybody in the audience? Anybody on Zoom? All right, so again, we are waiting for DMF, and yes on the natural heritage, or no on the natural heritage? Maybe we should find that out.
Probably not. I just had checked it
Probably
off.
not, okay. So we're waiting on, solely on DMF comment at this point then. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue to, we'll try for the 5th?
That'd be great.
September 5th. And again, this is solely for DMF comment.
So we're approving pending this comments.
Yeah, we won't make the actual
We're not gonna vote.
approval until next week. This is just the continuous to September 5th.
So moved, sorry. I fell asleep.
Jack? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously, so we'll see you on the 5th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, next is a continued certificate of compliance for SC 83-2218 Acres of Pines Association Incorporated, 65 Lewis Bay Boulevard, beach nourishment and raking.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, I'm Mark Burgess of Shorefront Consulting, who designed and permitted the project from the beginning. And the goal here tonight really is just to obtain a certificate of compliance with a specific ongoing condition among the ones that I suggested in my letter to allow on ongoing beach raking. The short answer is that this is a procedure that was allowed in the order, and they've been doing it for years, and they just want to be able to continue to do it in the manner that they do it. And I think we just have to craft a correctly worded ongoing condition to allow them to do that. The president of the association, Karen Frostholm, is next to me, and she's going to describe how they've been doing it. And after that, we hopefully just arrive at some consensus as to how they can continue to rake the beach. So with that, I'll hand it over to you.
So the Acres of Pines board it's very well versed in responsible beach raking. I think we've done it really well in the past. We make sure that we hand rake or remove by hand. We make sure that we take extreme caution in removing any sediment, sand. We know the importance of holding down the sand, the rocks, the pebbles, and so forth, as sediment that keeps the beach in place and prevents erosion. I believe that we dispose of it responsibly and properly, and we try very hard to do it the right way. We take great caution in leaving the rack line. We know that's an important part of the ecosystem of the bay. We all are very concerned about the bay, so we want to do things on our beach in the proper manner to help contribute to the health of the bay.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no machinery, everything's done by hand, and
Correct.
you let it dry before you...
We let it dry. It's stored in 2 separate spaces for the duration for the summer, and by the time we remove it at all, it's dry.
It's not on the beach drying, it's someplace
Right.
off the beach. So, right here, as you could see when we were there the other day, there's a pile of seaweed there.
Yeah, I don't know about that, because we haven't raked this year, that, to my knowledge.
Could that be, I live in the next beach, by the way. Could that be people who don't know better, you know, who aren't on your board doing that?
I can't speak to that, I don't know.
That's right at the property line. There's a bound in there somewhere.
I know where it is. yeah.
Okay.
Because if you were gonna rake, if you were on your beach and you were gonna rake, you don't
Mhm.
care about the property line, you just throw it there. And that's, my guess is what happens.
Mhm.
I was wondering if there's a way we can
Yeah,
prevent that.
where do you usually leave it to dry?
We can leave it in the parking lot.
That's great. That's fine. It just can't stay like this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, if you somehow
Understand.
can
Yeah.
communicate to all members.
We
So
can.
whose property is that on currently? Is it on
It's,
your
it's
property?
kind of, it's halfway on our property and halfway on the adjacent property.
Yeah, the bound that David's referring to is in that pile somewhere.
Yeah, that post is our property line.
Yeah.
It's a sign.
My guess is it came from your beach, just from the way it looks.
Yeah, the beach isn't draped.
You know, I think it's just a matter of communicating to your membership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leave, you know, do not rake.
Yeah.
You know, with my beach, I had to go to the board and I said, take that rake off the beach. People aren't
Yeah.
raking.
No, I agree. In fact, we have our annual meeting on Saturday, and Brittany had given me some literature. I actually printed out my own literature, managing seaweed accumulations on wreck beaches. It's from the Massachusetts Office of Coastal Zone Management. So I was going to share this with our members too, just so they could have a little bit better understanding of proper practices
And reasons why. Yeah.
and reasons why.
That's a
Exactly.
Yeah, as I
It
said,
is
I
important.
live on I'm on the Englewood Beach Association, and I'm always trying to educate people.
Yep, I do the same.
And we
My
have
dad
a-
was on that.
Yeah, and
the
then there are
Englewood Beach
renters who
Association.
come, and I'm sure that's true for you, and
Yep,
think they can do what they
Yep.
want.
So you're okay with the continuing condition then?
For nourishment.
What?
They're asking for two ongoing conditions. When the trigger points are exposed once more, an additional nourishment, because the permit was for nourishment and raking. So one time additional nourishment, and also for ongoing raking, for in perpetuity, without an open permit. If we issue the COC, the permit would be closed, and we would be allowing them to rake in perpetuity, which we have never done before.
Yeah.
I would argue, I
I
don't
argue
see any
against that.
rationale for that.
For which?
What are the trigger points?
Perpetually.
Do we have a specific?
Yeah, so the trigger points are rebar or concrete, can't remember which. They're installed at a certain elevation underneath the sand. So once they're exposed, it indicates that the sand has been lost to a certain level, and so that the beach would be allowed to be nourished once more to the initial profile that was approved in the original plan.
Yep. And that volume is predetermined by the calculations. And special conditions 8 through 15 cover that procedure. They're already in the order. So we were asked that those get carried forward in the certificate. And then special condition 17 is about the beach raking. And if we need to beef up that wording to say, for instance, you know, that any raked seaweed has to be put in the parking lot to dry. It can't be allowed to stay on the beach. No problem.
How do we usually do beach raking?
You need an open permit to continue beach raking at all of our other beaches that have been raked. So that's what I would encourage, that to keep an open permit, to file for another permit that's just for raking.
Yeah, so I don't have an issue with the nourishment. And we can't really, you can't put a condition on a certificate that isn't in the original order. So if we didn't have it in the order to say it has to be removed it has to be stored off-site someplace or in the parking lot or however you wanted to say it, you can't put it on a COC. And so that's my biggest issue with that.
We tried to extend this permit, and I think that hopefully I'm not mixing my projects up. There's a bunch spinning in my head, but I think we tried to extend the order, and that was denied, saying you need to just get a certificate of compliance. Am I
That
wrong?
was for the nourishment portion, I would believe.
Well, it was the whole order, but we wanted to extend the whole order so that they could continue to do this, and the answer we got back was, no, now you need to apply for a
I mean,
certificate of
both
compliance.
portions it's the same argument for both portions, that we're not allowing you to do nourishment in perpetuity.
Right.
We can't allow you to do something that you got a permit for in perpetuity. It's
Yeah.
it's a one additional nourishment, and
Yep, and nobody
you
has
want to do one single additional raking. It's not really the same comparison, but I don't think it would be to allow raking in perpetuity without an open permit. It's a little different than the nourishment closing out.
Okay, well, that's why we're here. We can be a little different. How is, 17, how does it say?
Should
not be carried out within 10 feet of dunes vegetation. Okay.
Should be kept unknown. It's pretty vague.
A little.
So the only specific it's missing really is to make sure it's removed from the beach and put in the parking lot. Now, that's an enforceable condition, meaning even if it's not in the writing, and you have another picture like what Brittany has there with the pile, that's an enforceable condition.
Well, I can see that we need to change this condition, the wording of this condition.
We did have,
for
just
the future.
Just of note, we did have it in, I wasn't here during that period because I was traveling, but we did have, I was reported to that we had a situation, I think it was beginning of August, with the heat, humidity, the strong southwest winds that accompanied it. We did have quite a buildup of seaweed on the beach, but it ended up not being just seaweed. I think somebody had found a couple of dead birds in there, and there were dog feces and quite a bit of fishing line and trash, which was removed by hand by the members, obviously to get that out. But it was during that time period of, that very uncomfortable weather.
That doesn't help me with this. So with the nourishment, we're looking at one additional, is that what we're saying?
Yes. At some point, don't know when.
So so I'm saying, I don't have a problem with doing it for like a one additional nourishment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
We don't either, yeah.
I'm a little less thrilled with the idea of doing beach raking in perpetuity without having a chance to come back. And especially given the order, the way it's written, I'm not real thrilled with the wording about that, because it just sort of, I think there's just too much stuff that leaves it up in the air. It's like, can you go back to 17 again, please?
Oops.
Minimum.
Yeah, raking shall be focused in areas of significant accumulations of nuisance seaweed. So, what's that mean?
Well, they have to leave the rack line, so it would be something in excess of a normal rack line, I guess.
So, I mean, if you...
What's nuisance to you and what's nuisance to me, I would
Might be different.
suggest it's certainly going to be different.
Somehow the regulations have to be written, and I agree, maybe this isn't written to the level of detail that you would like. If we can't change it, can we live with it, knowing that they've been good stewards of the beach, and that picture is an enforceable action if someone decides to do it, and it gets noted and reported, that's an enforceable action in addition to any certificate of compliance. So with the intent that they intend on continuing the practice and doing it the right way, if they don't, it's enforceable.
And we've never done this before.
I don't.
Take that. Take that step.
Approval, can't we just do it for 3 years?
Don't they come once a year and ask for it?
I mean, they can come back with a notice of intent for beach raking.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, we were going to leave the order open, but we weren't allowed to. So we're caught that way now. I don't want to go through I'm
So if
speaking for you, but the
you have a
expense of
new-
another NOI, and then 3 years from now, we're right back here again.
Well, if you have a new NOI that's just for raking, it would be different to extend that than if you had an NOI for raking and nourishment. I think that's what was the problem with the extension, is that they didn't want to extend it for nourishment for another 3 to 5 to 9 years when the plan is going to go out of date. For raking, it's mostly you just have an area. The plan doesn't have to be detailed and nuanced every few years for nourishment to be your beach profile to the height that you want. That's why the extension was denied, because it was both.
Yeah, I think I would be inclined, and in the meantime, I'm even willing, I'd be willing to even, as a compromise, I would be willing to maybe two years as just continuing, allowing it to be continued for a period of 2 years. And if you want to continue after that, then I would say it's time for a new notice of intent. And we can.
How would you write that in the COC? How would you write that in the COC?
COC would just see.
Only allow this COC.
The beach raking may continue for a 2-year period. Just tell them. I mean, just say that we're putting a finite.
So a subsequent notice would just be more specific in regards to beach raking, and then that could be closed out with an ongoing condition that would
extended.
work for everybody. Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think they would ever, I can't say that. It would be unlikely to ever issue a COC with allowing an action to continue in perpetuity without revisiting the site, the regulations, the specifics for, I don't think it would be wise to
But all of
issue.
that has to be put into an order.
Yeah.
Frequency of or in terms of you aren't supposed to be putting any condition on a COC that isn't already in the order of conditions or wasn't part of the original approval.
Yep.
So under this circumstance, I'd be willing, like I said, I'd be willing to let you do it for 2 years with the idea that you would come back sometime within those 2 years with a new notice of intent. And we understand what we need to do now. We need to shore up the idea of, finite areas where you're going to be raking and, frequency of raking. And above all else, I think the importance of having an ability there to, and I've lost my train of thought, and I can't believe I don't remember what I was going to say now. We were talking about
To extend, to keep it open. To extend it, to keep it open.
well, so I guess as part of and if we were going to continue it, or put it as an ongoing condition of the certificate of compliance, we would also have something in the order of conditions that would speak to essentially, you giving us ample notice and then going for us to be able to go out and assess on the ground situation again every year, every 3 years, however we want to do it. But we will put that into the order of conditions so that it could be continued then. And at least we would have some sort of a means of monitoring what's going on with and controlling what's going on. Does that make sense?
No.
Oh, it doesn't. You don't understand what I'm saying?
It'd be nice if it could be done, approved
Well,
administratively.
then I'm willing to say,
with guidelines.
again, I get it. I'm willing to give you 2 years this time, then come back with the notice of intent, and we'll just
Figure it out then.
we'll just stop it from there.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you came,
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, like, if you. This is far more complicated than it needs to be, is what it comes down to. I'm willing to give you the once and done for this
Nourishment.
current, with the nourishment and the raking and being done. All right. But I think we still need to do a new notice of intent, and at least we have the ability to sit down and do a craft a better order of conditions that controls that. And then I guess the other side of that is that should we ever, because we don't. I mean, you're right. We have never issued an order of conditions assuming that beach raking is going to be allowed in perpetuity moving forward. We don't even do it with the town. I mean, the town has to come back every 3 years to get the
Extension.
a new notice of intent.
Really?
Yeah. So
Well, I would agree, and I certainly would vote against perpetuity. Can't even say it.
In perpetuity.
In perpetuity.
Yeah, there's lots of conditions that go in perpetuity, but this is one that's harder to craft.
Well, it gets out of control.
That's mostly
Your people.
yeah. I mean, not again,
maintenance of mitigation plans.
Well, yeah, looking forward, if the conditions are crafted correctly, they're not now. If they were, then there's a specific procedure that they have to carry on in perpetuity, and if they're not doing it that way, that's an enforceable action.
You know what?
We're not going to talk about the future, I don't think,
no,
anymore.
I'm
We have that picture.
I'm turning the bus around here. I think it should be a notice of intent. You should file a new notice of intent every time. Because like I said, ultimately it comes down to the same thing. It's like we require the town of Yarmouth needs to come back to us every 3 years to get a new notice of intent or a new order of conditions for their beach raking. And I suspect that they are raking far less frequently than what you end up doing.
Don't they do it every week?
Yeah, I thought.
Because
They do it
the
once a
trucks
week.
go by my,
Yeah, once a week.
right?
Used to do
Well,
it. they
no,
used
I'm
to-
sorry, that's not true. They do it twice, they're doing it twice a week.
This year, they only did once a
Big,
week.
like, tractor with a
Yeah,
stake
they go by
thing
my
that
street.
sifts everything up and all that, right?
We changed where they could rake.
Right,
in our
yeah,
order, in
yeah.
our-
But that changed, that was another one of those things that it changed because
We had a new.
We had to
we had
file.
a new NOI.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, I'm sorry, I've changed my mind.
I thought we approved only one a week.
We approved up to
I asked
twice
for
a week.
One a week, but.
What did you say?
But the rest of the
Yeah.
board went with 2, so.
Yeah, we approved up to twice a week. This year, they have only been doing it once a week due to the availability of the shorebird monitors.
Right, which my daughter is one of them. So she tells me what goes on down there, so.
Yeah, it's just once.
So if we did get a new NOI, would that, under the could we get the conditions that during July and August, we could rake once a week?
Yep, that's what
Under
the,
the conditions of
whole
leaving the
purpose.
rack line and,
Yeah, it would have to be
That's what you
written
have,
specifically
yeah.
for that.
Right.
And have all those, we would work together to craft the order so that it's written correctly, so that those conditions could be carried forward.
correct. But that would,
No. No, that's what we're saying. We are not, or at least that's
Yeah, we're
what
not
I'm
doing it
saying. is
perpetuity.
Right, yeah, what we're saying is we're not,
Then they just have to keep extending it every year then.
No, every 3 years.
you could extend it,
Yeah, you just keep it open.
but you would extend it and keep it open for, 3 years, probably 6, but then, I mean, I can't speak for what the board's gonna be like in 12 years from now, but
I'm going to be retired 3 years from now, so
most likely I will be too, but
it'll all be different. But I understand the principle. So the closing out that we're looking at tonight would allow a one-time additional nourishment. And they're fine with that. I'm fine with that. It took 10 years for the beach to erode, but as we've learned, Mother Nature is flipping the deck of cards on us. So one time should be fine. And if it's more than that, then they're going to have to file again. But
yeah, but and again, because I mean, everything is going to change especially if it's like 10 years or something, conditions are going to be significantly different, so.
They may not even have a beach in 10 years.
well, Great Island's going to need a bridge, not a road, probably. Anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to approve the COC with one nourishment extension for one nourishment. Is there a motion to that effect?
I will.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Beach walker. The beach walker.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Okay.
so clarify for me, what happens with the beach raking now? Do we, as an associate, how do I come back with
We
them
have
to
to,
them?
we have to
Come back
file
with a
New
file
NOI,
a
okay,
new NOI.
okay, all right.
And that can still be the sketch plan that we have, and it just will show on it where the raking would occur, where the disposal area would be, things like that.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah, sketch plan or aerial image.
Well, I can do that
okay, all righty,
for next season.
okay. All right,
All right,
thanks all.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, the two storms that they were talking about at Great Island, I have a couple of projects in Harwich and one in Dennis. And they were almost exactly a year. It was December 24th of '22 and December 18th of '23. Exactly the same storm from exactly the same condition. It took one of my clients that had fiber rolls and a drift fence, wiped the whole thing out. 50 grand, gone. In one storm.
Yep.
So I struggle with what they're gonna do out there.
I think that's struggling with what they're going to do.
Yeah,
Thanks again.
All right, thank you.
thank you.
You too.
Another certificate of compliance, this one easy, with no conversation whatsoever. That's always nice. SE 83-1785 Don Carroll, 51 South Shore Drive. Motion to issue.
So moved. Something like that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Okay, carries unanimously. Other business, approval of meeting minutes for August 1st, 2024.
I read them, they're fine. I move that we accept them.
Second.
Did we vote?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Next order of business, another other business is OSRP, Open Space Recreation Plan, what is it?
Plan.
Recreation Plan. Ad hoc committee, recognition of approved 2023 Open Space Recreation Plan and vote to dissolve the committee. So I need a motion to dissolve the committee.
First, I'll
First recognition, great job OSRP, ad
I'll
hoc committee.
The committee has done its job.
And we won't have to vote again till October 30th,
And get rid of the
2030.
committee. So Jack, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. We are down to recommending appointments for the new Conservation Commissioners to the Select Board. We have one person to recommend right now is Bradford Bauer. Would somebody like to make a motion to recommend to the Selectmen Bradford Bauer?
I'll do that. That was at the meeting.
Jack came to the interview. It was great.
And you met him.
Yeah.
Great.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Any other business not reasonably anticipated?
The only thing I would say about Bradford was he's going to recuse himself. No, I'm just saying he would end up
Yes,
recusing himself a lot.
I don't think a lot.
Well,
He works for the Woods Hole
Have a
Group.
lot.
I mean, just nothing negative or anything.
Yeah, we don't have a lot, we fortunately don't have a lot of their,
Just one big one.
just one big one, yeah.
I have one thing that for Paul, while he's out, he's our representative to the Community Preservation Act Committee, and the applications for the next round are open. They're out. They're due September 20th, just so everybody knows.
Are we applying for anything?
At the moment, I think we would be applying for the Chasebrook Park project for any remaining funds. We do already have some Community Preservation Act funds from them, but just for the Yankee Village parcel. So we may be applying to reallocate those funds to all 3 parcels instead of being tight on the one in the center, or maybe just some more funding for the bridge for that project.
So we still need funding for the bridge. How much?
I'm not exactly sure how much. The budget is on Nate. I don't look at it
It's
as
fluid?
often. It's fluid. But that is our update for CPA applications.
Anything else?
Are you going to say anything about planning?
Which planning? Oh, in the future, in this fall, we're going to add goals and a goal setting session for the commission, probably at a short meeting, so that we can work on personal goals for the commission and small projects that we would seek funding for.
Would that include maybe public communication?
Yeah, definitely public outreach, focusing on invasive species management and our wetland regulations, how to prevent violations is top of our list for outreach.
In the past, and I'm not advocating this, but in the past, we've met as an extra meeting if all our meetings are so full.
We can also have a planning meeting. We've done that for regulations.
I just want to put that out there, because oftentimes our
not.
meetings are so long.
Yeah.
20, we even would, I never thought this meeting was going to last this long.
You didn't?
No, I didn't, but I guess I was wrong.
I was hoping, but
But I guess.
I'm not disappointed not either, so, or I am disappointed, but I am not,
No, I think what we heard was.
So
great.
brainstorm some goals of your own, and we can work together on setting fluid goals for the commission as a whole.
But when I said communication, I meant about our own goals.
Yeah.
You're going to hold a separate meeting with some community members, or?
We would be setting our goals internally among the board.
I guess I'm proposing that we should be getting some kind of.
Well, the whole
outreach for
open
that.
space and recreation ad hoc committee, the whole point of that was to get public input. There were 3 surveys sent to the public, and we got public input through that, and we had 2 public meetings. So a lot of the goals outlined in the open space and recreation plan should be what we're using to set our goals and like our action items inside those goals. So that's where our public input comes in.
Maybe yourself or somebody else, since we weren't really, all of us, a part of the discussions and background, you would be able to review some of that.
The goals are wonderful outlined in the OSRP. Ellie was our representative to that board.
So now we have no, but you are our only voice.
So is the plan online?
Yes, it's available on the website and in the town offices if you want to come view a hard copy in conservation or planning.
Okay. How big, how?
Yeah.
The appendices are like,
Pages, or is it-
All right.
or more? Oh, you
A
were
quick
going to print
read.
off a copy.
Okay, thank you. Can I move to adjourn?
you may.
I move to adjourn?
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned at 7:22.
Right.